It's recording.
All right. Thanks everyone for coming on this evening. We are talking about what we think is some exciting stuff related to the student perception survey work that you've participated in. And this is really an extension of that work through a new grant opportunity that we just received at C-STEP. So there are people who could join us tonight and people who cannot. So we're recording this webinar and we want you to feel free to chime in with questions. We will have some Q&A at the end. And you can always use the chat as well to ask your questions. Before we get too far down the road, we'd like to do some introductions. My name is Naswe Nishida, and I am the Executive Director for the Center for Strengthening the Teaching Profession. And I have with me Holly.
Hi, I'm Holly Hansen, and I am Director of Teacher Engagement and Initiatives with C-STEP.
And Sandra, would you mind introducing yourself?
I don't mind. Sandra Casanova, and I'm from Pullman. I teach second grade at Jefferson Elementary.
Thank you. Sheila.
And I'm Sheila Stolzatz, and I teach high school Spanish in Kalama, Washington.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so a little bit of a rundown about this webinar. We're going to cover a little bit of background just to make sure we're all on the same page with how you got to be here with us, kind of knocking on your door and asking you to participate. We want to talk about the MicroGrant project that we have been funded to do, some timeline and process pieces, really hone in on your commitments being part of the work group and answering any of your questions around that. And then we should hopefully be done within an hour to get you on your way. So we just had somebody else join us. Christine, can you hear us? It seems to take a little bit for it to sync.
It's kind of slow.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear us, Christine? Okay, we're going to move on. So a bit of background about the project. The last 3 years, we have really been working on the student perception work in Washington State. And I would say in general, it's a relatively new area in education. To collect students' perceptions and thinking about what's happening in the classroom. We've seen student perception collected when it comes to kind of the culture or safety and security of the building or the school that they're in. But we have not seen up until recently more work around student perception of instruction and of things happening in the classroom. So we embarked on what we thought was going to be a 2-year journey with a group of 8 school districts, and actually Sandra's from one of those school districts in Pullman, to really explore what student perception surveys look like, what data they collected, what the results looked like when they came back to teachers, and what that information could mean in terms of change in practice. So for 2 years, we really worked using other vendors or other companies' student perception surveys, and just kind of exploring that realm. What we found out in all of that work was a couple of things. One is there was a lot of interest in student perception and a lot of meaningfulness for teachers around what students thought about the classroom and thought about the instruction happening. And there was lots of ways in which the kind of off-the-shelf survey products that we had purchased as subscriptions from these companies, there were limitations. There were limitations around what those products could do. So we decided, how about we take another year and develop our own set of surveys and our own survey items that were a little more Washington-esque. So really in the 17-18 school year, with OSPI and educators, we developed, tested, and piloted some survey items, and we very much connected those items to instructional frameworks. So for the Danielson framework, there are items that are very specific, things that a teacher in the Danielson framework would be able to select and survey their students on. Same with Cell 5D, same with Marzano. So where are we now? We launched this fall with having done all the testing and development on those. All of those items are in eval, which is the online evaluation management system for the state of Washington. And any teacher, whether or not you use eval, can get access to those items, select which items they want. It does its magicalness, gets it to a survey link, and then electronically students can take those surveys and results can come immediately to the teacher. Just to clarify, the survey results are not shared with anybody but the teacher. So it is really upon the teacher to decide, what do I do next with these results? They could share them with their evaluator. They could share them with their colleagues. They could also just have a conversation about what those results indicate to them might be areas they want to focus on. And that's really where I want to shift to next about the work of this particular grant. So I kind of talked about these things. 3 takeaways that we learned from the 3 years of work. We learned that these surveys have a lot of power for teacher learning and the teacher's own agency in terms of a change in practice. We learned that teachers who had follow-up discussions with their students about the results and asked them more questions or had more discussions that were specifically about what students had to say. They typically felt those students had more ownership in the classroom learning, and that they were better able to understand their actions related to student learning, their actions being teachers. Lastly, a big takeaway was that these results seem to be an important part of the what next pivot. So really, having the survey results, doing the survey thing, it's important, but what's more important is what is a teacher going to do as a result of that? And that's really the biggie in all of this. So those were kind of our 3 takeaways that we said, gee, we need to, as an extension of this project, really work on figuring out how we provide some more resources and support to the field around what you can do next. What can you do next when you get these results? How can you identify an area you really want to work on and delve deeper into that area? So we applied for it's called like 500 different names, but we're going to go by the one name that they seem to be using most often, which is a 2 revolutions MicroGrant. And a MicroGrant literally is micro. It was no more than $10,000. It was to do something that was very focused on teacher efficacy, teacher action, teacher change. And this was a new organization that we had never worked with before, and really is funded through the Zuckerberg money. So a lot of this is Facebook money. The Zuckerbergs have invested in education, and they've really done some interesting advertising and marketing about their education foundation and what they're doing with this work. And it does appear that 2 Revolutions is one of the organizations that received a chunk of that money, and then is doing MicroGrants as a part of that. So I can't tell you exactly, Holly, maybe you remember how many MicroGrants, how many applicants there were?
There were 57 or 58 applicants.
Okay. So there were that many applicants, and I would say mostly probably teachers in a building or maybe a district grant application. And then we were selected as one of 6 that ended up with the MicroGrant. So we pitched building up the support and resources for the student perception work to kind of grow and thrive and move teachers towards the what next step of this. Here are kind of the requirements and conditions of our grant, of this MicroGrant. We are developing a student perception professional learning toolkit. Say that 10 times fast. I don't know how we came up with this really long name. We just call it the toolkit. Anyway, developing a toolkit. We want to incorporate, and this was actually a requirement of the grant, incorporate the Learn Next modules. So this is where things get a little more, there's another piece of this. Two Revolutions has these modules, which we will talk about more in depth a little bit later, called Learn Next modules, and there are 7 of them. And as a part of the grant, they want teachers diving into these modules, using their learning from these modules into the work that's going to happen through the grant. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then really the third component that we are required to do as a result of the funding is advertise the toolkit, advertise the product once it is done. I will say of the 6 grantees, we are the only grantee that's working on a statewide basis. Most of the grantees are either a school building that has something that they're interested in doing, or there are some districts, and they're all doing different things. Some people are doing a podcast. They're launching a new podcast. Some people are really delving into the professional learning definition and really revamping the structure and the kind of look at what their professional development looks like and how it goes. But all of it is very teacher focused. All of it is for the teacher audience.
And so really their focus is transforming professional learning to be more relevant and teacher focused. So that's really their shtick. That's what they want to focus on.
So what did we say would be included in this student perception professional learning toolkit? So we did kind of lay out some ideas about what we thought would be in the toolkit, but really you should know the big crux of our proposal is convening you all to be the thinkers, the think tank around this, to be the developers of this work. And so we just kind of listed out what we thought could be some ideas that come from you, really knowing that we're not necessarily, yes, we do have to develop a toolkit, but it could include a variety of things. So we did not really stick ourselves to one specific way or thing of doing. But we talked about there could be protocols for teachers to really, how do you have conversations about your student perception results with your colleagues, with your evaluator, with someone that you're working with. We talked about discussion guides. How do you have the conversations with your classroom? And how do you have those conversations in an appropriate way for the grade level that you might be at? We talked about online modules as a way of helping teachers understand their results, and maybe a hybrid learning model where you could do a little bit of online learning, but then also connect online with people. We talked about a variety of student engagement strategies. How can teachers and students really make some connections and engage with each other about the learning happening in the classroom that is authentic and is positioned in a way that's going to be meaningful for everyone. So those were just some of the general ideas that we talked about could be included in a toolkit. And again, we left it pretty open because we want to use your brains, thinking, and expertise to really pull that together. Okay, so a little bit about the Learn Next module. So I mentioned earlier that as a requirement, we said that we would have our team delve into these. These are the 6 modules: personalized learning, competency-based learning, deeper learning, tech-enabled, broader definition of success, assessment for learning, and learner agency. Originally, when we applied for this grant, we thought learner agency was best positioned for the kind of toolkit work that we were doing around teacher agency, that this particular module made the most sense for people to delve into and see if there were pieces in there that could be used for the toolkit. The feedback we got back after we were granted was, we need to see more than the one module used. So here I am, it's after 7 o'clock. I'm just going to be frank. We kind of went with the minimal amount that we would be meeting their criteria without blowing it out. And they basically called me on it and said, yeah, you got to do more than just that. So Holly and I went back and looked through the modules, and we do agree that learner agency is probably best poised, but assessment for learning could also be very applicable to this work, and deeper learning would be the third area. So we did submit back to them a revision and said there are 3 modules that really could work for this group and the work that they're going to produce. And they said, great, go forth and do. So we will talk a little more explicitly and show you a little bit more explicitly what those learning modules kind of look like. So I know you will have questions on those, and we will get to that. A little bit about timeline and process. So we're going to bring you together as a group. And Christine, if you probably didn't hear earlier, there are more of you than who is on this webinar. There are several people that just could not make tonight. So we're recording this webinar, which is happening tonight. This is really the informational webinar. We then are going to kind of give you basically an assignment. And one of those assignments is to complete that Learn Next module between now and when we see you on March 26th for our real face-to-face kickoff. Holly and I have gone through the one module, and we want to kind of highlight for you that yes, it's going to be a little bit of work, but it's not going to be crazy amount of work. And we also want you to feel free to go big with it. You can go far with it, or you can just kind of tick off a bite-sized piece and get through it. That's probably not a great way of saying it, but you understand what I'm saying. So you can kind of customize, as much as you want to do on that. We're going to show you kind of an outline of how you can do it in more of a minimal way. What we are going to ask you to do is really think about, is there any learning in that module that you took that could be incorporated into the toolkit in some way? So that's really the point of going through the module.
And I will say they're very reflective. So it's not like you're just jumping through coursework to check it off. It's there's actually some very interesting things in there.
So March 26th, we will see you, which we're really excited about, at our kickoff meeting, which is in Olympia. We'll have some more details in the next, in a couple of slides about that. At that meeting, it is the whole group coming together, and it's really going to be you all meeting each other, but also talking about and identifying what kinds of tools in the toolkit you think are important for teachers. As you have gone through taking the surveys and thinking about your results, what are the kinds of things you either would like more of or wish that you would have had access to that would have helped you think about those results and really pivot towards the teacher agency. What am I going to do differently? How am I going to think about this working with students in a way that I hadn't thought about doing until they told me more? So we really want to identify those tools at that meeting, and also where we can group you up into kind of subgroups to work together on those tools starting that day. But then there will be work kind of online, remotely, as you leave that meeting that you'll do in teams. So in April, it's really going to, between March 26th and the rest of April, it's really going to be the development of the tools that have been identified at that meeting. We will have some check-in times just to progress check how people are doing, answer questions, troubleshoot. And if there are tools that become finalized in April, we're going to want to start kind of a feedback processing loop on those, which really is just identifying different stakeholders who could be helpful in looking at the tool, maybe with a set of questions that they can respond to that will garner feedback that then can be incorporated to make them even better. May we see as really being the feedback loop gathering and incorporating the feedback into the finalized tools. We are looking at June to be able to present the toolkit at the WASA AWSP conference. It typically happens at the end of June. It is mostly administrators, both building and district administrators. And because we have to do some advertising, marketing of this work, it is a good conference to kind of get the word out. Those leaders typically are interested in kind of what's the new innovation happening and how can I kind of think about how my teachers could utilize it. So it will be some kind of presentation to administrators at June. July, we want to make sure that the finalized toolkit is ready to go for not only our website, but then we will load the toolkit onto eval, which is where the survey items are all housed right now. And OSPI has been a big supporter, so they are going to help make those connections to eval, make sure that we have some marketing via social media and email news listservs that kind of spreads the word in August as people come back. So really your work as team members will probably end in May, June, possibly the end of May, maybe trickle into June if you want to participate in the conference. And really July and August is C-STEP, just finalizing things and working with OSPI to get them online. Okay, so I know you have some burning questions, but I just want to go over some commitments. So as a team member, and hopefully after this webinar, you are still going to stay with us. You will be committing to completing one of those Learn Next courses, and it's one of the 3 that we identified, and really thinking about what ways that you can infuse some of that learning into the toolkit development piece. You will attend the March 26th kickoff meeting where we're going to really figure out what might be some tools in this toolkit that would be most helpful to teachers. Develop those tools, and again, we're thinking at this point, we're probably in small subgroups developing tools. I also think if you're somebody who really feels strongly about a tool and wants to go off on your own and do that, I know that there are different kinds of people who like different kinds of work in different ways. That's also an option. We want to make sure that the feedback is incorporated and the tools are finalized. And then really the optional piece is to the degree to which you want to or can participate in the messaging and advertising of the toolkit, both in June, but then also as we come back to school in August. And for all of that work, you get a whopping $250 stipend, folks.
Hey, I misread. Nasue, I misread. I thought where it said optional, it was like participate in massages. I thought that was of the stipend. I was all excited about that. Oh, messaging. Okay.
Jeez.
Good thing to think about for next year. Good. Yeah, I like that, Sheila.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop there, but I do want us to look at the Learn Next website very, very quickly to kind of orient you to how this would look on your end as you figure out which of the three might be of most interest to you. But I want to stop really quickly. Does anybody have a burning question, any kind of clarification that you need? Sheila?
With what, I don't know how big our group is, but it seems like what might be a good idea is if all of us did the one that you tried to get for the grant, so that we all, since it sounds like already you feel that that's an important thing for us to know, and then divide up the other two so that we have access to it and we may need it, but that we all focus on the one that I feel like you proposed. And I'm sorry, I didn't write everything down, so I don't remember which one it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me just go back to, so learner agency is probably most relevant, especially when we think about developing tools for the toolkit. The other two would be, assessment for learning. Thinking about, again, this one is really going to be about thinking around a teacher, how you're going to use that information to impact student learning. And then deeper learning is another, it could be very applicable. So those were really the three that we looked at. I do think your suggestion could be a possibility. What Holly and I were thinking is we would let you kind of explore each of those three and then determine what you really want to do from there. There are right now there are,
I'm sorry, I just noticed there's a little kid in the computer.
well, there is. Hello there.
Hi.
There is a little girl.
Hi.
Can you wave? Wave hi.
Okay, I'm back. I'm sorry, Naswe.
Okay. No, I like that.
She's her best friend.
So cute.
Very cute. So there are 7 people who have joined onto the group. We are still waiting from a few folks. We're hoping to get the group to 10. So that's kind of where we're at. And there are several folks that have not gotten back to us, and we're hunting them down basically right now. But we're hoping to get the group to 10. So there would be really a group of 10 of you. Kind of is where that goes.
And then as you get in and start looking at these and playing around with them too, you'll see that the courses are kind of multidimensional as well. So under learner agency, there's one that's dispositions, and that's a course with multiple modules. And so, yeah, it's once you get in there, it's much easier to see. But it's, yeah. So there'll be plenty to go and look at, and we might break up and make sure that everybody does one part of learner agency at least.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
So I am going to just click into learner agency. We'll make sure that you have the web link to this, and you're not going to be able to see this very well. This is basically your description. It describes what learner agency is, and really these are the tools that they have built under learner agency. So there is what they call a learning progression, which is a self-assessment, and we would like each of you to make sure that you complete the self-assessment. Again, this is going to look very small on your screen. But this is just, there are clickable boxes here. It's a nice document that you can use pretty easily, but get through it. And it might kind of help you identify where you want to go in that learner agency module. So you would start with the learning progression. And then the playlist I haven't figured out quite what that is. Where I want to take you to is under each of these modules are these courses. So if we want to look at dispositions as a course.
So, Naswe, if you go back,
Sure.
if you get on the playlist and play with it, it's indicators, and it kind of can take you all over the place. But so what you could do is say, okay, I want to go a little deeper under one of these performance indicators, and it'll kind of enlarge it and give you more information and some guidance about, and resources. So
yeah, so each of these has clickable, linked items here. And again, just know you can go far with this, or you could kind of scale back. And it's going to be up to you to kind of figure that out. The thing that I liked was you could take the learner progression, the self-assessment, kind of figure out where do I want to beef up a little bit more. And then if it was in dispositions, I could go to this, and I've already logged in as an account. You'll need an account. But basically it goes in and it's an online course description. So it talks about this information.
super friendly. Yeah,
you basically you'll see this menu on the side, and as you go through it, these things click off. So I've read, watched, and looked at what's on this part. Now I need to go to the think, do action piece. And so this would be something that is more something you might want to take into the classroom as you think about doing something, or something that you've done in the past that you can recall and kind of apply in that way. It's really, as Holly mentioned, more of a reflective tool than it is straight answer, ABC, or any kind of right answer. There isn't. It's really around you connecting your experience. And I think, again, you're going to approach this not only from the lens of you as a teacher learning and growing, but really from the lens of, would this information be applicable in the toolkit in some way, is really where we want to think about this work. Okay, so that is kind of the gist of the module. You will need to set up an account. We do want you to identify one of the 3 areas, take the self-assessment, and then select a course. I put from the playlist, but it's not from the playlist. It's just one of the courses listed under there, and complete the course. And really do that by the time we see you March 26th.
And I will send that sign-in link to everybody in an email as well.
So in order to kind of help all of us figure out what Learn Next courses people are doing, and this will probably help too as we figure out who is in this group officially. You are all in officially. We're waiting for a few more people to sign on. But we did create a Google Doc that's just going to kind of help track where people are at and what they're doing. So let me open this up here. This will also be shared with you. This is a folder that Holly has started for this group. It's a Google folder. And this is really where the tracking is going to come in. So Holly has decided of the 3, she's going to focus on learner agency, and specifically she's looking at the dispositions piece of that. Let's say she completes it on March 15th. And then she has some comments here about ways she sees that being applicable to the toolkit. She could write some of her notes in there. I think also she could bring those notes to the 26th meeting and also share them there, because we will talk about that at the 26th.
And And those notes would also be like, oh my gosh, you have to go do this. This was really
Yeah.
cool. Something, if you want people to kind of notice it before we all get together.
So that's kind of the gist of those Learn Next courses. Any questions about that? Okay.
It's a very rich tool. And so the other nice thing is that we have access to all this, which not everybody does. So
For free, yeah.
as you get in there too, there's groups you can join and all kinds of things. So we encourage you to play around with it.
So if you have not already, and we'll make sure to send this link to you, we would like you to RSVP for the 26th. This just indicates to us who needs different travel arrangements. Sandra, we know that you're going to need a flight from Pullman, so we just want to make sure we have that information down so we can book that for you. And also any food specifications, we want to make sure that we accommodate that. So we would like you to register for this meeting. Here's kind of the timelines. We're going to start at 9. But the room is going to be open at 8 and we're going to be setting up. So if you want to come earlier, please feel free. We will have coffee. We're going to adjourn at 3 p.m. that afternoon, just so that people can get on the road. But please know that we're going to make sure everybody knows kind of what their next steps are once they leave the meeting on the 26th. And the coach house is very close to the Capitol in Olympia. It's a fun little spot. It's we can move tables and chairs around. It's very flexible for our group. So I think that we should be fine, and we'll make sure to send logistics with the address, location, and information about parking for you. OSPI is just thrilled that that you all are going to be working on this toolkit. This is definitely something that would be so nice to have on that list, but not funded, not something that they have been able to fund. However, they are actually going to cover your sub costs and your travel expenses. So they are chipping in money in that way, so that we can utilize the money to really do the development pieces that need to get done. So that's all to say they are a great partner. They are very supportive, and you'll probably see Sue Anderson, whose shop is really in charge of this work from the agency's point of view. She will probably be attending part of this meeting, possibly the whole meeting. So you'll get to meet her and talk with her. And then we just want to make sure that for that 26th meeting that you will have completed your course, and then we will use your reflections to really think about infusing that work into the toolkit. All right, folks. Questions, concerns, confusion?
Oh my gosh.
What are you thinking? Sandra, I'm just going to pick on you. How is it sounding?
It's sounding great. I'm working on my renewal for national board. So
oh my goodness.
Told you everybody is.
How many people have turned us down, Holly, for this committee because they're either submitting time or renewing?
Should I? It's my question.
No, you have to,
Okay.
you have to stay on this committee.
Okay, I'll do it.
How close are you to being done?
I'm in good shape, I think.
Okay.
You know, I'm not too worried.
Okay.
I'm actually going to incorporate some of this into my writing, so
Do it.
Yeah.
So I do think, Sandra, you know, just as you think about, as we get into the 26th meeting and the tools, we start identifying different tools, you know, just keep in mind that you've got your renewal deadline coming up. And so, you know, probably you want to be in a group with other people so that you have some support that way. You know, you can figure that whole thing out, but
yeah.
we would love for you to continue on.
Yeah, I should be fine, I'm thinking.
Okay. Sheila, how about you? Any questions, concerns?
No, it's a pretty intense timeline. I think that I really appreciate how you laid all of it out, so it's not like get to the 26th and go, oh, because I think seeing that, I really think it's accomplishable. And you know, I just love this thing, so I'm all in. I wish I could drag Caitlin along with me.
No.
I'm so sorry. You know what? I've almost got her committed to the meeting. For those of you, I'm sorry. We last year I got to work with a teacher that had a really negative experience with her evaluation, and thankfully she was in a good enough space where we used this to not only help her with meeting with her principal, but also to kind of look at what practices do you need to do. So I'm very interested in that next steps, you know, what, so.
Yeah.
And to meet all of you.
Well, Sheila, if you can keep twisting her arm, we would love for her to join. And I actually think the two of you could have some really powerful tools, just based on your experience, kind of doing it together, sharing together, you know, approaching it in a way that was, is probably different than most people who've used the perception surveys have done. So
I keep telling her that.
I know. Christine, how about you? Questions?
I don't think so. I think my only question would be how many people total. I didn't know if the number 10 was the whole group or if it was bigger.
10 is our,
okay,
what we kind of our minimum. We want 10 people. And as you heard, we've had, it is just a hard time of year too, and it is a pretty rigorous timeline that people have just not, they've been interested, but it's just not going to work. So if you have a colleague, we also are looking for people who have experienced the surveys in some way. They've either initiated with their students last spring, or they've tried something this fall, or they were part of one of the project districts from the last couple of years. So we're kind of looking for people who have had some experience so that they can just kind of, they've already, I mean, for lack of a better, they've already drunk the Kool-Aid, and they see the value of this work. So thinking about how I utilize that with my colleagues to move to next steps, or how do I utilize that to just get some resources to support my own learning. We're kind of looking for people to be poised ready to go.
Okay.
Well, and I would say too, like the Camus group, you know, with 3 of you kind of being able to work together, and Shannon's the cheerleader.
Shannon is a huge cheerleader.
With all you guys along, yeah.
Oh yeah.
She said she couldn't be here tonight, but she was going to have a viewing party of the webinar later. So
I'm sure.
And I'm sure Shannon will listen to this. I'm sure it will have alcohol. So
yes.
we had a party.
Hey.
Whatever works.
Yeah.
Christine, is there any other questions or concerns?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. All right, guys. So we are going to, I want to give you as much as of your evening as possible. We are going to make sure that you have this slide deck with the links, but we're also going to put the links in an email to you. We are going to kind of do a little bit of recapping around getting the module selected, the Learn Next module you're going to do, and then starting that work going. I think those are the big things we're going to follow up with you on. And I think if you have any questions, you can contact Holly and I at any time. We will also, Sandra, just so you know, and Joanna, if you happen to see her, but we'll follow up with her. you guys will be flying in, so we will have some more communication with you about it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I just want to say thanks for jumping in and dealing with all of my emails to you and communication. But this is an exciting, I think we feel like this is a super exciting next step, and who knows where it could go from here. So being on the ground floor is exciting.
It is.
Yes.
Sounds fun.
All right, all. Have a good rest of your night. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Hey,
thank
good
you.
night.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.